The security camera alert pinged at 6:47 a.m. on a Saturday. Marcus Chen, a 42-year-old emergency room physician who'd just finished a brutal 16-hour shift, watched 3 kids cannonball into his pool. Again. For 8 weeks straight, his neighbor. Karen's children had treated his backyard like their personal water park. 8 weeks of finding floaties, food wrappers, and once, inexplicably, a half-eaten birthday cake floating in his custom saltwater system. But this morning was different. This morning, Marcus had finally discovered something that would make Karen's upcoming 4th of July party spectacularly disappointing, and he couldn't wait. Before we dive into how Marcus turned a neighborhood nightmare into the perfect lesson in boundaries, if you love stories where entitled people finally learn that no is a complete sentence, smash that like button and subscribe. Now let's see exactly how this unfolded. This is a story in 3 parts. The violation that pushed a dedicated doctor past his breaking point, the confrontation where a physician's precision met a mother's entitlement, and the resolution where careful planning delivered justice louder than any argument ever could. The violation built slowly, like pressure in a wound. Marcus had invested nearly $60,000 in his dream pool after years of saving, a sanctuary where he could decompress after watching people at their worst in the ER. But his new neighbor Karen saw it differently, saw it as community property for her 3 children. What started as occasional trespassing evolved into daily invasions. Marcus tried reasoning, tried politeness, tried every peaceful solution his exhausted mind could conjure. Each attempt met the same dismissive response. Boys will be boys, it's just water, don't be so uptight. The toll wasn't just the physical damage or the cleaning bills, it was coming home desperate for peace and finding chaos. It was the disrespect, the boundary violation, the assumption that his property, his investment, his sanctuary meant nothing. The confrontation came not with raised voices, but with cold, calculated timing. Marcus had spent 3 weeks planning, researching, and preparing. And when Karen finally pushed too far, when she made one demand too many, Marcus was ready to show her exactly what boundaries looked like. The resolution would teach an entire family that some lessons can't be ignored. Here's exactly how it happened. Marcus Chen had purchased the house in Riverside Oaks specifically for the backyard. After 15 years working trauma surgery in Chicago, he'd transferred to the suburban hospital wanting exactly one thing: space to breathe. The pool installation took 4 months. Custom saltwater filtration, temperature control, LED lighting that shifted through sunset colors, stone waterfall feature, the works. He'd spent weekends researching every detail, determined to create the perfect space to counterbalance the chaos of the ER. When the construction crew finished in late April, Marcus had stood at the edge for nearly an hour, just listening to the water, feeling something in his chest finally unclench. The Mitchell family moved in next door 3 weeks later. Karen Mitchell, a real estate agent with perfectly highlighted hair and a voice that carried 3 houses in every direction, had 3 sons: Tyler, 14, Brandon, 12, and Cody, 9. Marcus introduced himself the day they arrived, even brought over a welcome basket. Karen had smiled, thanked him, mentioned how excited the boys were about the neighborhood pool. Marcus had nodded politely, assuming she meant the community center 2 miles away. He realized his mistake on Memorial Day weekend. He'd been sleeping after a double shift when splashing woke him at 2 p.m. Through his bedroom window, Marcus watched all 3 Mitchell boys in his pool, using his expensive floating loungers as launching pads. No adult supervision, no permission asked. He'd pulled on clothes and gone outside, kept his voice calm despite the exhaustion. The boys had stared at him like he'd materialized from nowhere. Tyler, the oldest, had shrugged and said their mom said it was fine to use neighborhood amenities. Marcus had explained this wasn't a neighborhood amenity. This was his private pool. The boys had gathered their towels with exaggerated sighs, treating him like the fun-ruining villain in their summer story. Marcus thought that ended it. He was wrong. 4 days later, he came home to find them back, this time with 2 additional neighborhood kids. When he confronted Karen directly, standing in her driveway at 7 p.m., she'd waved her hand dismissively. Boys needed exercise. The pool was just sitting there. Surely Marcus didn't use it every single day. He'd explained he worked 60-hour weeks, and yes, he absolutely used it when he could. Karen had smiled that tight smile people use when they've already decided you're unreasonable. She'd talk to them, she promised. Maybe Marcus could just text her when he planned to swim so the boys knew to stay out? The third incident happened 2 weeks later. Marcus arrived home at 11 p.m. after a particularly brutal shift. 3 car accident victims, 1 didn't make it. And found his pool lights on, music playing from a Bluetooth speaker he didn't own, and evidence of a full pool party. Pizza boxes, soda cans floating in the water. Someone had used his expensive pool vacuum as a toy, now lying broken on the deck. The final straw was finding a bag of chips dumped directly into the filtration intake. He'd spent until 2 a.m. cleaning, fighting tears of exhaustion and rage. When he'd called the non-emergency police line, the officer had sighed sympathetically, but explained that without catching them in the act or having posted no trespassing signs, there wasn't much to do. Maybe install a lock? The casual suggestion that Marcus should further secure his own property against his neighbor's children felt like a punch. Marcus tried direct confrontation one final time. Karen had opened her door, listened to his careful explanation of the damage and his request for reimbursement, and laughed. Actually laughed. Her boys were good kids. Marcus was overreacting. Maybe he shouldn't have such a nice pool if he didn't want people enjoying it. She'd closed the door while he was mid-sentence. That night, exhausted and humiliated, Marcus made a decision. If Karen thought boundaries were negotiable, he'd teach her differently. And as he started researching pool maintenance codes and Karen's social media presence, he discovered something beautiful. She was planning a massive 4th of July party, 3 weeks away, pool party naturally, invitations already sent to 30 families. And Marcus was about to make that party very, very memorable. Marcus caught them on a Tuesday morning, June 24th, 11 days before Karen's party. He'd deliberately stayed home, calling in a personal day, positioned at his kitchen window with coffee and patience. At 9:47 a.m., all 3 Mitchell boys vaulted his fence. This time, Marcus had 4 different camera angles recording, time-stamped, and backed up to cloud storage. He waited until they'd been swimming for 20 minutes, until they were completely comfortable, guards completely down. Then he walked outside. The boys froze mid-splash. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He simply said, "Get out of the pool, now. We need to talk." Something in his tone, the same one he used in the ER when situations turned critical, made them scramble out immediately. They stood dripping on his deck, suddenly looking much younger than their ages. Marcus pulled out his phone, opened his notes app, and began reading. Tyler Mitchell, age 14, attends Riverside Middle School, plays JV basketball, has Mrs. Patterson for homeroom. Lives at 2847 Maple Drive, with your mother Karen Mitchell, real estate agent at Prestige Properties, and your father, Derek Mitchell, regional sales manager at Tech Core Solutions who travels Monday through Thursday every week. Tyler's face went white. Marcus continued. Brandon Mitchell, age 12, same school, on the swim team. Ironic, really. Has a severe peanut allergy, which I know because your mother listed it on the neighborhood email chain. And Cody Mitchell, age 9, attends Riverside Elementary. Brandon found his voice first. How do you know all that? Marcus smiled without warmth. I'm an ER physician. I've worked with your school nurse. Your swim coach is friends with one of our surgical techs, and your mother posts approximately everything about your lives on Facebook. Public profile, by the way. You might want to mention that to her. Marcus let that sink in, then continued. I know your dad gets home Friday evenings. I know your mom is hosting a 4th of July pool party on July 5th. I've seen the invitation she posted online. 30 families confirmed. She spent roughly $3,000 on catering, decorations, and supplies. She's been telling everyone about her amazing backyard setup and how the neighborhood is so pool-friendly. What she hasn't told anyone is that you've been trespassing in my pool for 8 weeks because she doesn't actually have one. The silence stretched. Marcus had practiced this moment, had decided exactly how cold and clinical to make it. Here's what happens now. You have 2 choices. Choice 1, I call your father right now. I have his work number. I show him the security footage from 17 separate trespassing incidents. I file a police report with all this documentation. I submit a claim to your homeowner's insurance for property damage totaling approximately $4,200. Yes, I had my pool service calculated. And I show this footage to everyone coming to your mother's party, explaining why it's being held at a house with no pool. Tyler looked like he might throw up. Marcus continued. Choice 2. In the next 48 hours, you 3 will clean my pool, deck, and equipment to professional standards. You'll repair or replace everything you've damaged. You'll write formal apology letters, actual letters, handwritten, specific about what you did wrong. And you'll tell your mother exactly what's been happening because I guarantee she thinks you've been swimming at the community center. The total cost will be approximately $800. Your allowances, your birthday money, whatever it takes. You figure it out. Cody started crying. Marcus felt a twinge of guilt but pushed through. And here's the important part. You have until Thursday at 6 p.m. because Friday morning I'm closing my pool for a week-long deep cleaning and chemical rebalancing. It's scheduled. The pool company is coming. The water will be drained and chemically treated. It'll be completely unusable for 7 days, which means it'll still be closed during your mom's party on July 5th. Tyler's eyes widened with understanding. But Mom's party, Marcus cut him off, is not my problem. Your choices, your consequences. You have 48 hours. I suggest you start with telling your mother the truth because I'm meeting with her Friday morning regardless of what you choose. Clock's ticking. The boys grabbed their towels and ran. Marcus returned to his kitchen, hands shaking slightly with adrenaline, and watched them sprint home. 10 minutes later, he heard Karen's voice carrying across the yards, shrill with panic. Marcus smiled into his coffee. The next 48 hours would be very interesting. Thursday at 4 p.m., Marcus heard his doorbell. All 3 Mitchell boys stood on his porch with cleaning supplies, looking exhausted. They'd been working since 7 a.m. Marcus had watched them through his window, impressed despite himself by their dedication. The pool sparkled. The deck had been pressure washed. His equipment was organized better than he'd left it. Tyler handed him 3 envelopes, handwritten letters on proper stationery. Brandon held out a cashier's check for $800. Cody just looked at the ground, eyes still red from what had clearly been significant crying. Marcus inspected the work thoroughly, found 2 spots they'd missed on the pool filter housing, made them redo it. Not to be cruel, okay, maybe a little, but because the lesson only worked if they actually learned. When everything met his standards, he invited them to sit on his deck chairs. They perched nervously, waiting for whatever came next. Marcus had planned to stay cold, clinical. But watching these kids who'd spent 2 days doing manual labor, who'd clearly faced consequences at home, who'd actually shown up and followed through, something in his ER instincts kicked in. The part that remembered most people aren't evil, just thoughtless. "You understand why this was a problem?" he asked. Tyler nodded immediately. "We treated your property like it didn't matter. Like you didn't matter. Mom always says we're entitled to enjoy the neighborhood, but this wasn't neighborhood property. This was yours, and we disrespected it and you." Marcus nodded. "And you understand I'm still closing the pool tomorrow?" All three nodded miserably. "That's the consequence part," Brandon said quietly. "We messed up bad enough that even fixing it doesn't undo it." Marcus felt something in his chest shift slightly. These were good kids who'd been taught bad boundaries. Still not his job to fix, but at least they were learning. The complication arrived 15 minutes later. Karen Mitchell's BMW screeched into Marcus's driveway. She stormed across his lawn in designer sandals, face flushed. "You cannot close your pool this weekend." "I have 30 families coming. Do you understand how embarrassing this is? How much money I've spent?" Marcus stood, gestured to her sons. "Ask them why." Karen turned to Tyler, fury radiating. Tyler, to his credit, didn't back down. "We've been sneaking into his pool for 2 months, Mom, without permission. We damaged his stuff. He caught us. This is the consequence." Karen's face cycled through several emotions before landing on defensive anger. "They're children." "You're a grown man! You can't punish them by—" Marcus interrupted, voice ER-level calm. "I'm not punishing them. They're facing natural consequences for repeated trespassing and property damage. I'm closing my pool for maintenance I've already scheduled and paid for. Your party planning is not my responsibility." Karen sputtered, threatened to call the police, her lawyer the HOA. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed her the security footage compilation he'd created. 17 incidents, clear faces, timestamps. Her expression crumbled. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I thought they were at the community center." Marcus softened slightly. "That's a parenting conversation you need to have. But here's what I'll do. Your party can proceed, just not at a house with no pool. The community center has a pavilion. It's available. I checked. You can move everything there. It'll be different than planned, but it'll work." Karen looked at her sons, back at Marcus, and something shifted. "They did the work?" Marcus nodded. "Every bit. Good work, too." She turned to the boys. "You three, car now. We're going home to discuss trespassing, lying, and consequences, extensively." As they left, she paused. "I'm sorry, Dr. Chen. Genuinely, I should have taught them better." Marcus nodded acceptance. 2 months later, Marcus floated in his pool on a perfect August evening. Cold beer in hand, city lights glinting in the distance. The water was pristine. His boundaries were respected. 3 houses down, he could hear Karen's boys playing basketball in their driveway, their own driveway. The 4th of July party had happened at the community center. Karen had told everyone the truth about why. Several neighbors had approached Marcus afterward to apologize for their own kids' assumptions about his pool. Marcus had learned that sometimes justice doesn't come from a courtroom or even a confrontation. Sometimes it comes from enforcing boundaries clearly and letting natural consequences teach lessons that lectures never could. And as he floated there in his sanctuary, finally experiencing the peace he'd built it for, he smiled. Because justice, whether served with anger or with calculated precision, was equally satisfying when it actually taught people to respect what wasn't theirs. Across the country in Portland, Oregon, retired elementary school principal Margaret Santos was pruning her rose bushes when her HOA president demanded. She removed them for uniformity. Violations. Margaret smiled, the same smile she'd used when dealing with difficult parents for 30 years, and pulled out the original landscaping covenant from 1987, signed by the HOA president's own father, explicitly protecting historic garden installations.